Thanks for those very inspiring metrics. One of the things that I always, because I used to buy a lot of training for my teams, and I've been giving the last 5 years a lot of training, and one of the things that I keep finding intriguing is you do this training or they get training, people find it very interesting and they apply it, and after 2 weeks it's gone. So I think one of our next speakers, actually, you see him here on the screen, is Peter. And Peter actually, he does a lot of role playing, and he found a whole methodology on how to get knowledge to stick within their sales teams. So let me quickly introduce the next session, right? So we wanted to get some true sales leaders on the stage so you can ask questions, you can challenge them. Please do challenge them with tough questions. And the one who's going to lead the panel is Peter. And Peter, I met him in a very weird way. I was in the car, I'm driving, and I think I'm going to put on some podcasts. So I find this thing called PS Grow. And it's Peter Snijdert's podcast, and he talks about sales, sales culture, sales community. He goes really, really deep. And then I phoned him up and I said, Peter, the picture you're using is ugly. Let me make some new pictures for your podcast. And the first picture we took is him bringing guitar and hitting it on my face. It's a beautiful picture. You can see it on the Instagram. Works really well for the attention, but he also knows what he's talking about. So he's a true sales leader. He has done $1 million deals himself many, many times for a lot of startups who has been scaling. And on top, now he's a sales director at Dropsolid. So Peter, I'm going to give the stage to you. Before he starts, at 11:30, we have our first breakout room. Normally there was another one, but one of the speakers has just fell ill. So at 11:30, we have our first breakout room, and that's all about marketing, sales, combining them. What are the metrics from a sales point of view you should leverage at marketing? Peter, floor is yours.
Boo. Hello, everybody. Can I ask you to stand up, please? And now jump in the air 3 times. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Now I have your attention, and I'm going to introduce you my 3 guests. First of all, we have Jean-Claude Sandrap. Jean-Claude is really, I wouldn't call him the dino, but the old seasoned sales leader. He has worked for multi-million years at Microsoft and now is leading the applications division within Oracle. So interesting guests. Then we have another Jean, but then Jean-Paul Damen. He has actually sold his company and he is now leading the Zoho Corporation, which is a lot of software building blocks, as he calls it, and he really started within a very big company, which is 11,000 people, the European division from scratch, literally recruiting the first sales. So very interesting profile. And then my third guest was really caught by surprise, because this morning we received an email from Christophe Bostein, which is a VP of Showpad. He is ill. He was actually at the emergency of the hospital. I hope he will survive. So he could not make it. So I had to, together with Michael and Martin, just pick somebody out of the audience and ask, will you be my Chinese volunteer and participating in the panel and answering very challenging questions? And then we came to Sven Lens, which is the founder, managing director of SalesX, an organization, starting organization, recruiting sales profiles. So give a big applause for Sven, Jean-Claude, and Jean-Paul. Now, I'm going to ask them sales organizations in a very rapid changing environment. Now, first, I'm going to ask you a question. You can use the app on your mobile phone. I hope you all have downloaded it. And the first question is, it's a poll, and I'm not going to ask you questions about COVID and things like that, but today, we are at the end of May, remote selling, digital selling has made sales more difficult, yes or no? It doesn't work, thanks to digital, huh? Okay. Bon. I'm going to Martin. I'm looking at you. I don't know where the results are, but I'm going to ask the question to Jean-Claude. I mean, in Oracle, I think Jean-Claude lives like 80 kilometers from the office from Oracle. So I think he has been, I wouldn't say remote working for a lot of years. So what is your take on the complete, right now, the digital selling? Has it made sales more difficult or not? What's your take on that?
Yeah. Does this work? Yeah. I'm not sure if it's more difficult or easier than before. I think it's a opportunity that you have. Indeed, I live 80 kilometers away from the office. So I would say commuting every day is not very efficient. It's not very productive. So it was a change indeed when we started selling, I would say, digitally. But it was also, I would say, a change moment for our customers. And to be honest, I believe our customers really changed or adapted quite quickly in the digital selling mode. And I believe the new normal will be a balance between, I would say, what we always did before and what the model will be for the future. So I think it's an opportunity. I don't see it as a complexity.
Now, Jean-Paul, you have literally started your first office in the Netherlands, then in Lille, then in Paris. So you have to sell a lot digital, as you explained to me, because the first people you recruited were marketeers and not sales. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, if you look at the way people communicate today with video conferencing, that's new for most of them. For me personally, I've been doing video conferencing for 20 years, so I was used to it. But for me, one of the big changes was that instead of having 25 apps on my phone for flights and for taxis and for hotels, etc., that everybody had to go to work behind the screen. And I saw people struggling doing it and not feeling very comfortable. And if people are not comfortable, the sale is also becoming less comfortable. So you have to ease them and make sure they are feeling good behind the other side of the screen. So this is a new challenge for many people when they have to work digitally.
Yeah. And Sven, what's your take on that?
Well, I'm glad to see the results here. It's clearly 75% says no. I underpin that message or that conclusion. I think that digital sales, remote selling is absolutely the future. It actually enables sellers to prepare their contacts as well. They can, before they pick up the phone or they reach out, they can do some research. So it made their life much easier. It made them more successful in the end as well. But of course, I think there is still a battle in that sense that a lot of traditional salespeople still need to adapt to that new world. So there is still a learning curve to take.
My personal opinion is that the great sales who are creative and who are very good in asking questions, or as a conclusion, who really add value, that there they really can make the difference in a more digital way. What's your take on that?
Yeah, these days you have a lot of interesting technologies actually that support salespeople in doing remote selling. Think about the Humani app. It actually helps people to, when they are doing a remote conversation, based on the words they use in their pitch or in their conversation, that it brings up new interesting slides that they can use and that they can put forward. So there are a lot of technologies actually that facilitate that new world.
Okay, Jean-Claude, you have seen it all. Literally, when there was no email and the animals were still talking. What's your take on that? He's talking about all these technologies. Sometimes I have the feeling that people tend to think, there's a new sales technology. Now my target is going to be reached. And so the interpersonal relationship skills are no longer important anymore.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Once again, it's a balance for me. What we tried from the beginning is, I think that's a big difference when you do things remotely, is that you need to catch the attention of the customer. If you're in a physical meeting room, it's kind of hard for a customer to lose interest. In a virtual way, it's kind of very easy. People put their cameras on. I think that's a kind of a must-do. But after some time, they switch it off. So what we introduced is a form of gamification in your presentation. You know, do something, I would say, fun with the customer, entertain them, also ask them to do something. I think that's a little thing, a little trick.
And how
makes your life easier.
And how did you coach your people into that? Into that more, I would say, entertaining, interactive thing?
Yeah.
How did
we do have creative teams, we call them, and those are kind of people, I would say, they have no sales skills, but they're more into the entertainment of your business. So they create views, they create little videos, they create kind of little applications where you can entertain the customer with and where the customer needs to play a role in. And of course it was a learning for everybody, you know. We also learned while we were doing this.
For you, Jean-Paul, I mean, as you have a lot of distributed teams, remote teams, I mean, how do you keep an emotional connection with your teams? Because I've seen a lot of companies, due to some bad onboarding or just the remote fact, that they are losing 50% of their staff, also sales staff, because they want that physical connection. Physical, not that they hug each other every day, but seeing each other. How do you do that?
Well, we bring them to our office, we visit them, but we foremost like to have them around us. If you work with a lot of young people like we do, then you have to coach and guide them, and you cannot put them in an office remotely in a place in Lille or in Berlin or in Valencia. You have to see and meet them, to train them, to develop them, and make sure they feel okay and that they know what they do.
So
like,
you still travel as much as you...
Well, I think today, after COVID, it's more in balance. Previously, I've been traveling about 100 days a year, but I still think, and I not only think, I'm convinced that working and in sales, you need to see and meet people. Once you drive into an office, like today, for example, we drove in this industrial area, and then you drive towards this venue. You see the company, you see the people, you see how people respond to you, you see the receptionist, you see how they feel, how they welcome you. With a conference tool, you would never see that. So you would never see how much they would like to work with you or not. And this is the first barrier you have to overcome when you do sales digitally. And so I really think if you work with larger accounts, other than with retail, with small accounts, it's more difficult. But with larger accounts, when you have value deals for long term, you need to see people. You cannot just do it digitally.
Yeah, that's
absolutely convinced with it.
That's the biggest challenge.
Support. Yeah,
that's the biggest challenge in the remote selling thing. 100% is that the non-verbal aspects you are losing. And thank you for the bridge. You're coming to the next question. It's again a poll. Is relationship selling is dead? Is that true or false? And relationship selling, you can make up your own definition, what you understand under relationship selling is dead. Relationship selling is not dead, I see on the screen. It really depends, I think, what you understand under relationship selling. If you think 100% wining and dining and going into fancy bars and clubs, I think that's a little bit dead. But the real seller needs to create value, and based on that value creation, he or she can create a relationship. I'm going to start with you again, Jean-Claude, because you have also experienced the wine and dining culture, I assume. What's your take on that?
I would rather be in the upper category, that they are dead. And with being dead, I mean that the concept of the super sales, as I saw them 20 years ago, I think the super sales is dead. The one guy who does everything, who manages a deal from A to Z, I think business has become too complex. There are too many angles on this. And you need to work in a virtual team and bring that value with different people to the customer. So in that way, I see change. Of course, is there still an opening and a place for a relationship? Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You, Sven, what's your take on that?
Yeah, actually, it's still working. Okay. I think relationship selling is absolutely not that. People still buy from people.
That you're an ex-marketeer, it sounds strange hearing it from you.
Indeed. But in the end, people still buy from people they like, they trust. So I think that level of trust is something that you can get across more easy when you meet people in a human interaction. I'm not saying that every stage of the sales cycle needs to be face-to-face or human. We can definitely combine it, but that's, in my view, the future. If you can combine it, that's absolutely the key.
Okay, and you, Jean-Claude? Jean-Paul, sorry.
Well, I think if you look at the question, you first need to segmentate the market. You have business to consumer, business to business, mass market, and you have, let's say, VIP customers, and they all have their own unique treatment. So business to business or business to consumer sales, relationship selling could be that. Nobody from LinkedIn, for example, called me to build a relationship in order to make a subscription for one of their software tools, or Facebook, or pick one, right? But if you want to establish a relationship with someone because you need them for long term, then relationship selling is absolutely a must do. But there are markets where relationship selling is dead. Yeah, that's foremost true, yes, absolutely.
Because you started literally the European organization from scratch. You first hired marketeers, then salespeople, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Now,
but if you find a sales manager before the marketeer, he is also welcome. We have 100 positions available today.
Okay, so this
we just need people. Good people.
Now,
You're not
thank
alone.
you. Well, what is then a good salesperson for you, he or she? I mean, is that relationship building something you look for? What are you looking for in person? And don't give me the cliches like passionate and driven, blah, blah, that's everybody knows that. I want to go deeper.
Well, if you look at people and the culture, which is important in a company, if you look at culture, norms and values are set at a very young age of a person, when they grow up. But later in life, you learn how to protect and defend yourself, and you pull up barriers, and you are fighting behind a kind of a wall. And we, first of all, like to see the person behind it, and see the inner person. And for me, it's very important to understand the passion behind the person, the energy level, if he's in balance with himself, if he's in balance with his neighborhood. Then you can help him to grow and to set him in his strength. This is a very, very key importance to us when we find people.
Outside, you told me that you love what you are doing, and you really believe that you should do the job from your heart. Okay,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
And then my question is, are you going to find out if that person really loves what he or she doing, or if he or she is just doing it for the money?
No, we try to figure out if he really loves what he's doing. If not, then get another job or help him another job. There are many other jobs out there, but you have to know what you really like and how you really can have a happy life.
Yeah, and then looking at you, Jean-Claude, I mean, big corporations, you work for Microsoft and Oracle, they pay you a shitload of money as sales if you're doing it right. I mean, what's your take on, if you compare it to companies, smaller companies in Ghent or in Bruges or whatever? I mean, that's typical. What's your take on what Jean-Paul has said?
Yeah, I believe that, I would say, the package on itself doesn't work anymore today. There should be more of that.
Especially with younger people? I mean, younger, we are young still, but yeah. I mean, people between 20 and 30?
Yeah, certainly for sure in the younger generation, you know, they don't care about the car or the best phone or those kind of things. They want to work in a hybrid way, in a virtual way. They want to have free time. They want to have time for the family. They want to have time to travel. So that's for sure something we see with a younger generation. And then I would say, next to the salary of more senior people, at the end for me, they also need to be kind of a people manager. The only difference is that people don't report directly into them, but they need to be able to manage virtual teams and also get kind of energy of working with the other ones and also making the other ones successful, not only themselves. I think that's really important.
And are you also going to first look at who that person is and what he or she is driving from within? like Jean-Paul explained, when you are meeting somebody new?
What do you mean with from within?
Maybe I can add something to it. For example, last week I posted a position for a technical support
A
engineer.
little bit close to the mic.
So last week I posted an application for a technical support engineer. And then close to 75 reactions or people responded to it. But for sure, not everybody is having, he's in balance with himself or with herself. And we would like to have the people who are really confident in what they do and they are enthusiastic and have the right energy set. Because what we want to do is we want to build Rome. Right? Rome isn't built in a day, it's a long journey, it's a marathon. And for that you need people who can stand out and who can, they don't have to be specialists in sales or in marketing. We can learn this. But you have to have the people with the right mindset.
That's an interesting one. Do you also believe that, I also recently hired people who were not coming from a typical sales background and they're doing a great job. What's your take on that, Jean-Claude?
Yeah. There's always a possibility, and we do have a separate program, for example, for school leavers or people with, I would say, a very junior experience. Mm-hmm. But you need to be realistic, and I see that in reality it often takes 12 months, a year, before somebody is kind of onboarded and able to go to a customer, I would say, in an independent way, because at the end we do sell pretty complex solutions. But I always say kind of a balance of 1 on 5 people, there is room for that. But if you do it, you need to surround them, you need to help them, you need to be next to them, you can't leave them alone. So that's my take on that one.
And you, Sven, because you hire now for SalesX, salespeople that are going to be on your payroll and you're going to outsource sales roles within other companies.
Yeah.
So what's your take on that? How do you do that?
I think first of all, when we approach people or people approach us, I think there needs to be a match with the DNA of the company. They need to see the value, they need to believe in it, and they need to they need to have the willingness to live the brand. Let's say.
Yeah, but I mean about recruiting. Sorry, it's about recruiting the sales. My question.
Yeah. So when we have conversations with people, I try to measure how they may fit in on that part.
How do you do that? How do you do that to fit in?
We have a process in place where we try to set them up in a sort of a role play, and where we send them out for, okay, this is a situation. Now you have to sell this Stilo, for example, to us. Start doing it. Just unprepared, and they just need to see how they respond to it, how they package it, etc. I think I'm a very strong believer in the fact that as a sales leader, you need to surround yourself with people who are actually smarter than yourself, because that will drive your company to the next level. So that's really one of the things that we try to keep in mind. But of course, not hiring the same person as you are, but try to have complementary people in the team that really stand up as one.
Okay. Now that's an interesting one. The typical mistake, a lesson that you learn from being a sales and then becoming a sales manager, is that when you hire people, the first thing that you try to do is hire a copy of yourself because you think that works. I mean, looking back to your career, Jean-Claude, if we could go back and we'll meet the Jean-Claude when he was like 28 and you stepped in your first manager role and you could do all it again, what kind of advice, lesson, failure, fuck up, would you give yourself as a manager?
I must be honest, I've also been in that trap of kind of hiring the copy of yourself. I think there's also, for example, a role for HR to play there. HR needs to challenge you on the kind of people that you recruit. But then next to that is accepting that people are different. For me, it's important that there is a fit, a cultural fit. You don't need to think alike. I often say we can agree to disagree, that's okay. But as long as you both agree on the fact that you disagree, and then at the end, I would say, involve the people. Involve the people in your decision-making, in your thinking. Give them a voice in the company. Give them a voice in the team. Also like this kind of conferences, I knew times 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when this was only for the happy few. I would say, bring your people here, bring your people to events, let them participate.
It's the same thing with the thing you just mentioned, is that the old thinking is that only between brackets, senior, C-level, whatever senior people within the sales organization can meet, for instance, C-level people within the customer. So expose younger people, salespeople, account managers, to C-levels very early on. That's also what you were saying, eh?
Yeah, absolutely, and some people do feel very comfortable with that from the start.
Because it's something you need to learn, eh?
Yeah, there are other people that are not comfortable, but help them, surround them. It's like going to an event, you know. If you go to an event for the first time when you're in sales, you're kind of uncomfortable, you know. I'm here by myself, nobody is talking to me. You need to learn, you know. You go to your neighbor and you tap on the shoulder and you say, hey, how are you? My name is JC, and you need to learn this, and you need to help the people to do that.
Because sometimes more junior sales think that these C-level people from the customers are like Lady Gaga or Robbie Williams that they are meeting, so they are afraid, they put them on a pedestal and they don't know, they think that everything they touch is gold, but they forget it's also a human being which is behind that.
Yeah, and also on the customer side, the customer needs to be open for that. Yeah. And you have, I would say, people that are with a stuck mindset, also on the customer side. Let's be also clear about that. And people with an open mindset, that also happens on the customer side. So sometimes there is a kind of a match to make, and you need to judge. Sometimes you fail, but for me, failure is just a kind of the middle step to have success next time.
You just mentioned the word mindset. That was a word when I'm now 47, so when I was around 37, 38, I find mindset complete American bullshit. But nowadays, I just 180 degrees look at it another way. So what is the typical view on hiring people on their mindset? Is it an important thing for you or not? And what kind of mindset are you looking for? Michael Humble, mindset is not meditation, eh?
Yeah, I believe it's, for me at least, I think it's really important, you know. I see sometimes with seasoned sellers, I've done it before, I've done it for 25 years, I've done deals of 10 and 20 and $100 million. I always say what you've done 10 years ago, sorry for my wording, I don't give a shit about that. The customer judges you on what you do today and what you do tomorrow. And I think that's a kind of a mentality that you need to have.
And you, Jean-Paul?
Yeah, actually it's exact same thing. I'm not bothered about the numbers, I'm bothered about the energy level of a person and how he's willing to be successful. So for example, I have a nice story to tell you when it comes to mindset. A few years back when I had my company, one of the big, call them employment agencies, said, you have to talk to this guy. I said, okay, why? Yeah, he needs a job, and I think you like him. I said, okay, well, send him over, we have a discussion. And this guy was homeless. He didn't have anything. He lived on a bank, on a couch of some of his friends, without any money. But I could see the spirit in his eyes and the energy that he was so happy he could have an interview with somebody in the software industry. He used to be a junk and live on the streets. But he also was good in computers, very good in computers. So we gave him a job. And this is everything when it comes to mindset. You see it, you feel it. If there's the chemistry, if there's a balance, there's the trust, then okay, I'm going to help you, you're going to help me. So we have a bond. And if there is a bond, you can be successful. And I can do this with you, I can do it with you, I can do this with you. I can do it with everybody here.
I mean, that's an interesting one. Sven, now, I mean, in terms of mindset, I look at skill will. Can he or she get the skills necessary? And what's the will? That's what you're talking about. And then I'm looking for coachability. Can that person take honest feedback and deal with it and take responsibility and do something about it? So the action part, because sometimes people take coaching feedback, but they don't do anything with it, and they keep doing the same things, which ended up in the same results. What's your take on that, Sven?
Yeah, absolutely. That's indeed the mindset that they have. Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to take up the next step in their career in X amount of time? And are they open to learn?
But in recruitment of sales, how do you discover that?
It's always very difficult to measure that, of course. But I think that during the conversation, you can put your finger on the pulse. It's a gut feeling as well. There is no hard science that can help you. I'm personally, I look at the experience they have, but I think the person itself who sits in front of me it's absolutely more important, and the attitude they have, how they look at the future, not only professionally but also in their personal life. I think that's what really matters.
Yeah. Now you mentioned a very interesting one, taking decisions from the gut. I call that intuition, sixth sense, whatever you want to call it. I learned early on, because I am a very rational left brain guy, I only took decisions by my head. But the moment I introduced that gut feeling, I have realized that sometimes I hired people and in my head it all clicked, but the gut was off, and afterwards I was wrong. And I've done it several times. I'm looking at you, Jean-Claude, because what's your take on that?
I always dare to balance again two things. I'm a fan of a bit of a grid, you know. If we look at certain skills, scoring, you know, try to give some points. Although this is also subjective, but at least you have some form of comparison. On the other hand, I always say, when it would be my company and the money would come out of my pocket, and I only have one ticket, I only have one sales guy to hire, would I hire him, yes or no? That is for me the reality check. If I doubt that I would hire him if it would be my company with my money, then, you know, probably I won't hire that person.
Okay, cool. Now we're coming to the last question of the poll. Are you hungry? No, not that. Should you spend more time on performance management, so on cadence calls, or on competency building of your team? This is now also something that you can fill out in the app. Yeah, it's of course this is choosing what do you like, French fries or pizza. I mean, it's of course it's both. Although I think I'm going to look at you, Jean-Paul, is that when one person is not getting their targets and all the others, okay, that's then maybe something to do with that person. But if everybody is not getting their targets, then I'm looking at you as a sales leader, and then maybe you should build out the competences, or you just hire the wrong sales, which is something, in 100% I don't believe in. What's your take on that? Performance management or competency building? Yeah. And how do you do that?
Well, foremost, I think there's also a third element to both of them, and trust. Do you trust them? So, because sometimes the results stay out and it takes more time to get the results, but do you still trust it? The same as in the military or in rugby playing. I've been playing rugby a long time of my life. So, if you're maybe not being that performant, but can you trust on your team that you can win the game? Then you can do everything with competence management, with training, with development of skills, etc. But do you still trust your buddy out there when you have to close the deal? You can trust your support team or your marketeers who sit over there. Who can you trust? And are you ready to change? Because if what you're doing is not bringing you the results, you have to change.
What I also believe is that sales is running a marathon, and you can also look at it from the other way around. You can have people who are overachieving their targets, but they have done it in a very backstabbing way with the customer, but also internally. Is then what they are achieving more important than how they are achieving it?
No, but I also know those people. I've been working at large companies like the Oracles, but then I won't mention the names. there were people. I'm not a sales guy actually. I'm a business developer. I look at it from a different perspective. But I've seen many sales guys getting all the targets, but selling is different than delivering. If you sell it, you also have to make sure the customer is happy when you deliver the services, or you deliver the software, or you deliver the solution, and then that's another game.
Okay. What's your take on that?
I always look at three different things. I think performance, of course, if you're in sales, is important. You know, a sales guy or a sales lady that haven't sold anything for 3 years in a row, then at least you need to have some questions around it. You know, having questions after 3 years is probably not the right way to do it.
Sorry to interrupt. I mean, you're talking about 3 years. What is the exact timing to start looking? Is it like when the person hasn't sold anything for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year? What's for you like a red flag? Like, there's something wrong there.
I think it's hard to judge on a 1 year time frame, because also once again in complex projects, often those projects they do go over a 12 months time frame. So I look at performance, I look at competencies and skills, and then I look at personal development. I think those are three things that you need to balance out, and at the end, performance is an outcome of the different things that you do. But also there, you know, don't wait till year 1 or year 2 or month 6 to do an evaluation. I'm a strong believer in situational coaching. When you go to a customer, when you see somebody acting in an internal meeting, don't wait till the next evaluation moment. Give feedback right away and try to have that conversation. I also like that, you know. People give me feedback, I want that, not in my evaluation after 6 months, but on the fly. And I think that's the kind of the rhythm that you need to have to come to that desired outcome. And then sometimes it will fail or it will not fail. But
Agreed.
Okay.
Continuous development is, I think, way better than every 6 months or once a year.
Yeah. You mentioned something very interesting, all of you, by the way, for half an hour, is Jean-Claude, is personal development. I met a lot of salespeople, and they expect me that I will do all the work of training them. Whereas I'm like, what is the last book that you have read or podcast that you have listened to about sales? Because you have to take responsibility instead of being in a victim role and saying, look, Oracle, Zoho, or SalesX, train me and make me a great sales or being the best version of myself. What's your take on that?
for me, personal development is something that you own yourself. Don't look at the company, don't look at your manager. Although I think, for example, with younger people, you need to help them a bit, because sometimes they don't really know themselves the kind of direction they want to follow for the future. So you need to give them, of course, some form of support. Normally the company also does provide, I would say, packages, trainings, depending on competencies and skills and things like that, but they need to own it themselves. Even the best sales guy, I always say, give me 2 or 3 development points, you know. And it's not only about bringing a bad point to a good point, it's also, I would say, sharpening a great skill into an even better skill in a positive way.
Okay.
I think everybody needs a mentor. That's a good thing. And even me, you. Yeah.
And you believe also in reverse mentoring, where, I mean, I also believe in that the young people can also mentor you.
Sure, absolutely. Because
break your fixed mindset.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, we at SalesX, we also have an academy for SDRs, for example, and we provide a framework on how people can develop themselves. But of course, it needs to come from them. In the end, they need to be willing to invest in themselves to grow their career in the future. And if they don't have that, and that's indeed one of the things also that we check during the interviews, then if they don't have that, then yeah, there's maybe not, they are not that motivated.
Okay. Now, I'm going to do something which is not prepared because I like those questions. I mean, you all have seen Mr. Michael Humble. He has written a book called Nobody Knows You. And the thing is that I find it, like a couple of years ago, complete bullshit. The complete personal branding thing. When I started a podcast about sales, I got as a gift personal brand. Now, I really believe in that story. I really believe, of course, company needs to do branding, but I also believe in these modern digital times, every seller is responsible for his or her own personal brand. how small it is. Like for us in our team, every seller needs to do a post on LinkedIn every week and not sharing some generic content, blah, 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 but really a personal story connecting to build their own brand. Not for me, it's for them. I mean, looking at you guys, Jean-Claude, what's your take on that? Because that's a complete new way of using technology. Because people talk with people. Let me start with him, Jean-Claude.
Yeah, and I must be honest, I also have a development path on that thing. We discussed it. I think it's the easiest thing probably to put aside. To say, you know, I won't do this and this is not necessary. But at the end, the way you are branding your company externally, but also internally, if you want to even recruit people, I think people will look at other people that brand themselves internally or externally. So I do believe it's important in today's digital world, absolutely.
And are you going to stimulate your people to look at that?
Absolutely,
After
yes.
coming on my podcast?
So I think it's also leading by example. And as I said, you know, I'm probably the first one to be guilty of not doing that enough. So that's also my commitment I took to you. And I will also try to, you know, guide, I would say, my team to do this and invite them to do this. And also, if needed, help them to do that.
Yeah.
But once again, you know, it's a development point on my side. I agree with that. I'm not...
I mean, in terms of networking, it's exponential. I mean, looking at you coming from a marketing background, what's your view on that?
Well, I think there is a difference between asking them to send out messages, to post on LinkedIn, etc., and creating a personal brand. Because personal brand goes much further than that. It's really about stepping up, making your face the face of the company in the end. But I'm pretty sure today, in the world that we're living, a lot of people start searching online, so you better be there, and you better make sure that you have an online presence, and as a salesperson, you're part of that, that's part of your role.
And are you going to bring that also into the sales that you are hiring, or is that not a topic at the moment?
Of course, someone who doesn't like LinkedIn is going to be difficult.
Yeah, but I just came back from Ibiza and I was speaking to a kind of a senior from the UK working in a big company. He doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. Even he said, no, I don't care. So.
And what was his age in the industry?
He was in the aerospace. He was a project manager, but he was a business exec. Eh?
Well, maybe that's a personal choice at that moment, yeah, but.
And you, what's your take on that personal branding?
I think it's, well, for everybody you have to decide yourself if you want to do this, but I think it's important if you are in a certain industry. For example, the software industry is not that sexy. You have to give it a face, and you are actually the person who is selling it, and they have to trust you on this. Because
so you are sexy?
No, but it's the DNA of a company. It's the nerve system.
Say yes now.
It's the nerve system. Hey, Oracle is providing nerve system software for a company. The Zoho is doing the same thing. And you don't let anybody touch your nerve system if you don't know the people behind it. So you have to give it a face. That's what I say. That's my message. You have to show off. Not like I'm the best guy out there for sales or whatever. We just we try to build trust in the market, and we try to build our brand to give them a face so they know if they have questions where to go to. This is, I think, an important thing in our industry.
Okay. Now, we can all agree that finding great salespeople today is very challenging, correct? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who find it very easy to find great salespeople in the audience? Are you silent, so I assume you agree. The thing is, if you look to the Oracles and the Microsofts on the one hand, and then the Showpads and the team leaders and all the fancy Adidas wearing, bears tattooed startup scale-ups, which have right now a very heroic kind of rock star mentality. You're only a rock star if you can play guitar, by the way. That's my personal opinion. But how you guys are going to recruit people, because sometimes I lose people to those fancy startups who, sometimes create some kind of unicorn image that's working for them is going to be the best of the best. How are you going to make sure that you attract people there? I'm going to start with you because I heard you yesterday in the prep call saying 90% of the people never heard of Zoho Corporation, including myself. How do you do that?
Well, that's a real tough job. You have to hang in there, and for us, because nobody knows us actually, you have to build a brand first. That's why we hire marketeers first. But finding them is a difficult thing, because you cannot say we're not aggressive in getting people to work with us. They have to like it first of all. They have to believe our story. They have to see what we do. They have to have a good feeling with it. They have a good chemistry. That's an important thing. And we try to post on social media. We try to work with recruiters. We try to find recruiters. But it's a tough thing. We even also ask our partners, who are also here today. Thank you, Carl. And we try to people around us who work with us for a long time to bring candidates or to introduce us to people who really like it. Sometimes even customers apply for jobs.
Okay.
People working at customers.
Yeah. And you, Jean-Claude, I mean, I assume that a lot of sellers, like potential candidates, they are searching the market. I mean, recruiters like Alexander and Steph from Headlights, they are chasing, having a kind of a bag of good sellers. So today the seller now can choose, and it's the company selling his job also, and not being that arrogant company of 20 years ago saying you should be happy working for me. How do you do that?
I believe indeed that branding is important, and you know, if you're Oracle or IBM or Microsoft, at the end it doesn't really matter. And there I agree with having a face in the market. I will also be very honest and transparent. In the master plan for our Belux subsidiary, we have 4 big axes, and 2 of those axes are around branding. It's external branding and internal branding, and for me they go hand in hand. And you need to do something around your internal branding, because people need to be proud, people need to testify about what they're doing at the company. That's kind of where you referred to a few minutes ago. Yeah. And you can use that internal branding for your external branding. But you need to have that human face, you know. Also, often we do great things, we give back to society, we do things for climate and stuff like that, but we never talk about it. So I have something like, you know, only highlighting or underlining or bringing outside some great things that you do internally, it already makes a big difference. And you don't need to hire the big 5, you know, to make your strategy plan for that.
Okay. And you, Sven?
Yeah, I think with a strong background in marketing, this is everything related to employer branding. Huh? People that you hire need to match with the DNA of your company, with the values that you set forward as a company, and that can make the difference. So there is a big responsibility as well on the HR side, because in the past I've seen a lot of times that HR didn't really talk with the more commercial roles, and that they had their own personal branding. But there is a responsibility here to work together.
Okay, thank you. So I have time for one question from the audience. Is somebody who is burning on his seat, hadn't slept for 3 days, and he or she wants to ask a question to these 3 gentlemen, of course, about sales leadership in these changing times? Somebody? Nobody. So we've come to the end. I hope it was worthful for you. Is there anybody? Oh, okay.
Thank you. I had put my questions in the chat, so I'm going to find them back. Wait a second. Yes. Colombo. Here we go.
Always the last question.
When we were talking about meeting the client in person, my question was, don't you think that it sells better to meet your prospect in person? Maybe not at all stages, but a blend of both. So what would be your take on this? Because sometimes meeting your prospect for the very first sales meeting is perhaps a waste of time, because you need to discover and to understand the needs. But maybe later in the process, it's important if you want to close. That's my first question. And the second one, whilst I'm at it, when you were talking about the mindset, would you agree that to learn sales, you learn it with experience, so from the ground by doing sales and failing, and that the skills develop with time rather than theory?
As a real sales, he got one question, he asked two. I'm going to start with the second question about the experience, the mindset. Jean-Claude, we just talked about previously also about that. I mean, about the failing thing. What's your take on that? Because, I mean, you have to get a target.
Yeah, I think failure is one of those things where you need to be open and transparent on in your communication. The easiest thing is to send emails and have great presentations on all your successes, happy customers, the people who receive an award internally. But you also need to be open to talk about failure because you can learn about failure. And as I said, for me, failure is just the middle step to your next success. So don't hide failure, you know. I even see when people leave the company, that's more from a people perspective, we always send big announcements when people get into the company, and then we kind of let people leave without any, without any communication. Also on the negative things or the more hard and harsh things, communicate about it, be open about that.
And you as a leader, can you admit that you also made a mistake and shared that insight?
Once again, it's a thing you need to force yourself in, and absolutely, of course, I'm looking forward to a meeting with a happy message. If you need to say farewell to somebody, I think nobody wakes up in the morning say, I need to say farewell to somebody. Okay. You're just with a shit like that in your stomach, but at the end, those are things that you need to do. But once again, failure, they don't come overnight. Failure, it has been built up, and if you try to be on a constant communication level, normally a salesperson should feel when things are not going well. It shouldn't be a surprise on the evaluation.
Yeah. I want to respect timing. You have 1 minute as a closing answer to the question about the physical, because for you it's really applicable. I mean, when do you enter, do you always do everything fully remote or meet the customer or prospect in person?
Now, coming back to the question, I think you have to find the right balance where you meet people in person and where you use digital tools to support you. But meeting people in person, it's by the end of the day, we are all our people, so people to people always works best. But for, let's say, operational excellence or for time winning or for having more conversations on a day with customers, then the supportive tools will help us a lot.
Okay. Including
Gong. Also learn today, 130 words in an email, okay. Bigger emails sometimes smaller emails. Good tips. Yeah.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you, Jean-Claude, Jean-Paul, and Sven. Can I get a big applause for this gentleman? And Sven, you did great. I hope the experience was as good for you as for me.
I need
Michael,
a drink now.
It's up to you again.
Thank you. So I'm the guy between you and lunch, basically. So what I'm just telling you is very short. Lunch is over there in the how do you call that, a tent. And then the breakout rooms, because I had many people asking me, where are those breakout rooms? Is basically you have to go there, over there, where the lady is waving. There are the 2 breakout rooms. If you just use the app, you'll see that we start at around 1. There is a demo, there's a whole explanation where Gong is going to show their platform. At 1:05, we have the 2 breakout rooms that start, and at 1:15, it's back on the main stage for a panel. So have a good lunch. See you back at 1 or 1:15. Thank you.